Welcome to another episode of the Mighty Mentality Mentor podcast. I'm your host, NLOG. So last time we talked about, a little bit about the iceberg metaphor. We talked about a couple of different perspectives in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and how one person can have a more competitive or a little bit more of a competition-based perspective, and then another individual could be a little bit more focused on the self-defense aspect of things. And so, on top of that, we also talked about intent and arrival fallacy and a little bit of impact bias, but we're going to spend a little bit more time today delving in arrival fallacy. Arrival fallacy, as we defined last time, is the idea that once you reach a goal, you will experience enduring happiness, and that's the fallacy. Is that a lot of folks have reached that goal, and they don't experience enduring happiness. Last time we talked about some of the examples of celebrities, and they end up enduring depression. They end up undergoing really heavy drug use. You take a look at some of these business owners. Most of the business owners that got into it and unfortunately, things did not turn out well for them. Those are the individuals I'm mostly talking about, because those are the individuals that they did it for the wrong reasons, right? They say that they didn't want to take orders from anybody. And, I think, again, that's not exactly the best way. So, it really stands to question now, how do we know what to aim for? How do we know what our purpose should be? If you're liking what you're hearing, give me a follow on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Mighty Mentality Mentor. On Facebook, give me a follow at mighty.mentality.mentor. And on X at Mighty Mentality. So when I'm taking a look at the items that I kind of want to pick up here as far as the skill set is concerned, I first take a look at how I view picking up a new skill set. Picking up a new skill set and being able to do something with that skill set, that's part of the chemical equation, right? We briefly talked about this last time, and so I want to really delve in on this now, because that chemical reaction, right, which is made up of reactants and products, it's not really a binary style sort of on-off switch, but rather it's proportionate to the reactant that you have the least of. This some of you chemistry-centric individuals might know this as the rate determining step, right? The reactant that you have the least of is going to be the one that is going to be the limiting factor, right? And so when you take a look at trying to get from one place to another, your current state and your ideal state, or your current state or your desired state, in order to move from your current state into your desired state, you gotta have some change. Some change needs to happen. Something needs to be different, right? And that's where the skill set that you have can be viewed as the item that got you there. The change that got you to the other side, right, of what it was that you were trying to achieve, right? And so I want to just sit on that for a little bit, right? Because if we have just a binary style on-off switch, it's difficult to really put a lot of emphasis on the skill set, because your result's your result. You're just going to get it, whatever, right? Call it a means to an end, that kind of a mentality. But if you're looking at things as more of a chemical reaction and less of a binary but more of a gradient style of thinking, then you'll understand that skill set that you introduced as part of the reactants to get you to where you wanted to get to, or your product, that changes you, right? That skill set changes you. And so who you become becomes part of that equation. And so that's what I'm real big on. You know, take Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as an example. Again, I'm gonna end up using Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as an example because I'm in it right now. I'm a white belt, and literally, man, I'm frothing at the mouth of this Jiu Jitsu stuff right now, man. I'm telling you, it's super fun, and I'm really addicted to it. But you know, some of the benefits thus far, obviously, there's self-defense. You know, obviously, I've been getting better cardio. Obviously, I've been getting in better shape. I've been in a much better mood, obviously. And you know what? There's also a great community. You know, I talked about this last time, and again, I'm going to talk about the great community of folks that are there. You know, and so if the result isn't really the goal, then what are my goals? You know, what are my goals for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu? You know, and you know, if you take into account this idea that a lot of folks within the Jiu Jitsu community have, is that today's blue belts are greater than blue belts of 10 years ago. You know, today's purple belts are greater than purple belts of 10 years ago. In essence, the game is changing. You know, this all comes from just the fact that jiu-jitsu is kind of a never-ending game of counters. You know, if you're able to move from a very hyper dominant position, such as having an individual within an arm bar, or if this individual is able to get a hitchhiker escape, you know, then really at that point it's difficult to say who's better. You know, back before the hitchhiker escape wasn't a thing, the individuals that ended up being able to get to that armbar position, these individuals would win. But with the introduction of the hitchhiker escape, all the individuals that first found out about that had an escape to be able to utilize. And so a common counter to the hitchhiker escape is to make sure that you're focused on your foot placement. Okay? And so again, that is a counter to the original counter of the hitchhiker escape. A counter to a counter. And so because of this never-ending game of counters, there's always going to be advancement. But the fact still remains that if you're sparring or rolling with an individual that has never, ever, I mean, we're talking a brand spanking new person. They might have watched UFC. They probably know what an arm bar is, you know, and they know what a rear naked choke is. They know jiu-jitsu, everything. Or, well, they know of what jiu-jitsu is. They don't know jiu-jitsu per se, right? These individuals, when you first roll or you spar with them, it's very, very easy. It's like grappling a child. And so that ability to grapple a child, the extreme white belt, if you would, brand spanking new white belt, that doesn't change, right? So irrespective of the fact that the game is evolving and continually raising the bar of your layman or your regular normal individual, that bar stays the same. So again, this never-ending game of counters, you start to kind of view what the big prize, the black belt, right? Because that's the big prize all the time. It's always the black belt. In this never-ending game of counters, what is the prize? Well, to the layman, I tell them that it's getting my black belt. It's good enough. They'll understand it. They get it, right? To myself and to those that understand the journey, it's to get better. Simple as that. Just get better. I've already had an opportunity to roll with an individual who is, what I would call an extreme white belt. Several actually. I'm pretty confident now that in a altercation, I would be able to handle myself, and that's kind of the goal, right? Now, in a situation where an altercation can come about, what's the thing that you do? You don't engage, right? You do your level best to disengage so that you don't have to worry about, coming up with any sort of issues in life, right? So, for me, what's the goal? Get better. Simple as that, right? Get better. That's huge. So, cause and effect, it closely resembles chemical reactions, right? It's not a light switch that's just gets turned on and gets turned off, right? And like in chemical reactions, each stage we achieve is achieved because we become who we needed to become at the previous stage. A white belt doesn't just become a black belt, right? You go from being a white belt, to a blue belt who is competent of the moves and ways that they can or cannot get attacked. Then they move from blue belt to a purple belt, an individual that's more competent with all of the moves and is able to use all of the moves with relative ease and competence. And a purple belt graduates to become a brown belt because they're able to be way more fluent and have way more options, not just one or maybe two of every single position and submission. And then finally a brown belt turns into a black belt because they've achieved mastery in basically most of the basic positions. But then all black belts always talk about the journey just beginning, and of course mastery is a relative term, and so that's what they're talking about as well, is achieving that mastery. So every stage that was achieved, white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, red belt in the case of some long-term individuals. We'll talk about the red belt maybe in coming episodes, but right now we'll just stick to the black belt, right? Every single stage required a different version of an individual. You can't get to blue belt if you're not willing to be the white belt that's coming to class, getting their asses kicked every single time. You need that to be able to understand how important that technique is and to be able to really understand how you can use this technique to your advantage. So I'm going to state this again. Your focus should be the journey and how it changes you. Because the way that a journey changes me is what I keep in mind when selecting a new skill set to learn. It's what I'm looking at when I go, you know what, that's going to be the next thing that I'm going to add to the tool shed, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it for today. Thanks for listening again. Give me a follow on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Mighty Mentality Mentor. On Facebook, give me a follow at mighty.mentality.mentor. And on X at Mighty Mentality. Thanks again for listening.